The bottle shattered against his skull before he could draw his gun, and the waitress who'd been invisible for 18 months became the only thing 5 killers would remember before the lights went out. But that moment was still 17 minutes away. Before we jump in, I'd love to hear from you today. Drop your location in the comments. Are you watching from New York, London, Sydney? We want to see how far this story reaches. Let's continue. Manhattan, Upper East Side, Lumiere Restaurant, 9:47 p.m. Jin-Woo Park didn't believe in God, but he believed in patterns. He sat at table 12, always table 12, with his back pressed against the mahogany-paneled wall, eyes tracking every reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking East 67th Street. The Bordeaux in his glass remained untouched, a prop for normalcy. Outside, yellow cabs blurred past like nervous thoughts. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast honeyed light over Manhattan's elite. Hedge fund managers celebrating mergers, surgeons impressing mistresses, old money pretending new money didn't exist. Jin-Woo belonged to none of these categories. At 33, he'd built an empire the city pretended not to see. Shipping containers that moved through Red Hook with cargo manifests that didn't match their contents, luxury real estate purchased through shell companies registered in Delaware, nightclubs in Koreatown where debts were settled in back offices. His Navy Tom Ford suit cost $8,000. The Patek Philippe on his wrist cost more than most people's cars. None of it filled the hole where his family used to be. He checked his phone. No messages. There were never messages anymore. Not from his mother in Seoul who'd stopped answering his calls 3 years ago, not from his younger sister who'd changed her number when his name appeared in a New York Times investigation. He'd chosen this life deliberately, meticulously. The loneliness was just the price of power. A shadow crossed his peripheral vision. "May I refresh your wine, sir?" The voice belonged to the waitress, the one who moved differently than the others. Jin-Woo had noticed her the first time he'd eaten here 6 weeks ago. While other servers performed hospitality like theater, she performed disappearance. Her movements were economical, purposeful, eyes constantly mapping the room in a pattern he recognized because he did the same thing. She was always positioned within 15 feet of an exit. "I'm fine," he said without looking up. "Of course." She withdrew, but not before he caught the calluses on her hands, wrong for someone who carried trays. Those were fighters' hands, or soldiers' hands, roughened by grips and triggers and things that required strength. Have you ever noticed someone trying to hide who they really are? Drop a comment about a time someone's true nature surprised you. Across the dining room, Amara Williams refilled water glasses with mechanical precision, her mind calculating distances. 12 feet to kitchen, 23 to rear exit, 37 to front doors. 18 months of this. 18 months of shrinking herself into wallpaper, of styling her natural hair into a tight, low bun, of speaking in the soft, deferential tones that made people forget your face the moment you left their table. She'd been a ghost for so long, she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be solid. But she felt solid now, her body tense, alert in a way that made her neck prickle. The Korean man at table 12 had that effect on her. She'd Googled him after the first night. Jin-Woo Park, suspected organized crime ties, never indicted, photographed at charity galas with senators and tech billionaires. Dangerous in the way calm water is dangerous. Still on the surface, lethal underneath. She should have requested a different section. The entrance doors opened. 5 men walked in, no reservation, overdressed in a way that screamed trying too hard. Designer jackets that didn't quite fit right. Cologne applied like armor. The maitre d' approached them, but they brushed past him, eyes scanning. Searching. Amara's hand tightened on her water pitcher. Her training, the training she'd spent 18 months burying, screamed a single word through her nervous system. Threat. She watched them fan out across the dining room with tactical spacing. Professional. Coordinated. And every single one of them was looking at table 12. Jinwoo saw them in the window's reflection before they reached him. His jaw tightened. No weapons visible yet, but the intent was clear in their posture, in the way the blonde hostess suddenly found herself shoved aside, in how other diners began sensing something wrong the way animals sense earthquakes. He reached slowly toward the Glock holstered against his ribs. The lead man smiled. Cold, rehearsed. "Mr. Park," he said, voice carrying across sudden silence. "You should have stayed in Brooklyn." Then all 5 of them moved at once. The first bottle came from the left, a Chateau Margaux 2015, $800 worth of violence that exploded against Jinwoo's temple before his hand reached his weapon. Blood sprayed across white tablecloth like modern art. The dining room erupted into chaos. A woman screamed. Chairs toppled as patrons scrambled for exits. The lead attacker, 6'2", neck tattoos crawling up to his jawline, lunged across the table, fingers reaching for Jinwoo's throat. 2 more circled right, blocking escape routes. The remaining pair positioned themselves at the exits, herding terrified diners away like sheep. This wasn't random violence. This was execution. Jinwoo's fist connected with neck tattoo's jaw, bone meeting bone with a crack that echoed off marble floors. He twisted, trying to reach his gun, but a knee slammed into his kidney, professional placement, meant to drop organs. He gasped, tasting copper. A blade flashed in the chandelier light, 6 inches of steel aimed at his ribs. It never landed. Amara moved. Her water pitcher became a weapon, swung in a perfect arc that shattered against the knife-wielder's skull. Glass and water and blood formed a constellation as the man crumpled. She didn't pause. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. Krav Maga drilled into muscle memory at Fort Huachuca, close-quarters combat refined in Kandahar, the terrible efficiency of knowing exactly where to strike to end a threat. The second attacker turned toward her, confusion flickering across his face, just a waitress, before her elbow drove into his solar plexus. Air exploded from his lungs. She swept his legs, and 200 pounds of hired muscle hit the floor hard enough to crack tile. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. The room had gone silent except for ragged breathing and the distant wail of car alarms triggered by the violence. Neck Tattoo and his remaining partner froze, reassessing. The small black woman in a server's uniform stood between them and their target, hands loose at her sides, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Every line of her body promised more violence if they continued. "Who the fuck are you?" Neck Tattoo spat. Amara didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because answering meant existing, and she'd spent 18 months not existing, and now she just demolished that careful invisibility in front of a room full of witnesses and... Jinwoo stared at her from behind his table, blood streaming down his face, and in his eyes she saw the worst thing possible, recognition. Not of her identity, but of what she was. A soldier. A weapon. Someone dangerous pretending to be harmless. Her cover was obliterated. The 2 men at the exits moved first, rushing her simultaneously. Amara's brain calculated angles, defender's disadvantage, multiple attackers, civilians in crossfire, but her body just moved. She caught the first man's punch, using his momentum to spin him into his partner. They collided like bowling pins. Her knee found a kidney, her palm found a throat, and then she had one of their dropped weapons, a Sig Sauer P320, familiar weight, pointed at neck tattoo center mass. "Leave," she said quietly. "Now." Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't shake. She was steady as stone, and that steadiness was more terrifying than the gun. Neck Tattoo looked at his 4 incapacitated partners, at the small woman who dismantled them in 90 seconds, at Jean Wu who was now standing, his own weapon drawn. The math wasn't good. "This isn't over," he growled, backing toward the exit, dragging one groaning partner with him. "It is for tonight," Amara replied. The door slammed. Sirens grew louder, 3 blocks away, maybe 4. The maitre d' was on the phone with 911, voice shrill with panic. Other diners filmed on iPhones, capturing evidence that would be trending on Twitter within minutes. Amara's eyes met Jean Wu's across shattered glass and overturned chairs. Everything had changed. Everything. "I need to go." Amara's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with urgency. She dropped the Sig Sauer onto the ruined table and turned toward the kitchen exit, but Jean Wu's hand caught her wrist, gentle but immovable. "Wait." Blood trickled from his temple, staining his collar crimson. "Who trained you?" "No one. I just—" "Don't insult my intelligence." His grip tightened fractionally. "You disarmed 3 men in under 2 minutes. That's not instinct. That's military." Sirens screamed closer. Red and blue lights strobed through the windows. Amara yanked her arm free, but when she turned toward the kitchen, 2 men in dark suits blocked the doorway. Jean Wu security materialized from wherever they'd been positioned. One spoke rapidly in Korean into a phone. The other stared at Amara like she was a bomb that might detonate. "Mr. Park, we need to move you," the first guard said in accented English. His hand rested on his weapon. "And we need to secure her until we understand." "She saved my life," Jean Wu interrupted. "She's a waitress who fights like Mossad. That's a problem." Police radios crackled outside. Through the windows, Amara watched officers establishing a perimeter. Any second, they'd come through those doors asking for statements, checking IDs, running names through databases. Her carefully constructed identity, Amara Williams, DOB falsified, Social Security number purchased from a hacker in Baltimore, wouldn't survive serious scrutiny. She was trapped. "Please," she said, hating the tremor that crept into her voice. "I can't be here when they come in. I can't." Jean Wu studied her with unsettling intensity, blood dripping onto his $8,000 suit jacket, and she watched him calculate. She'd seen that look before on intelligence officers evaluating assets, useful or dangerous or both. "Why?" he asked simply. "Because I'm nobody. Just a waitress who got lucky. Nobody moves like that." He swayed slightly, adrenaline crash hitting. His hand pressed against his ribs where the blade had caught him, not deep, but bleeding steadily through his shirt. "You're lying. The question is whether you're lying because you're dangerous to me, or because you're running from something else." The second guard spoke urgently in Korean. Jean Wu responded, tone commanding despite his injuries. The guard looked unhappy but nodded. "My associate says there's a service exit," Jean Wu told Amara. "Clear for the next 90 seconds before NYPD locks down the block. You can run. But those men who came for me, they saw what you did. They know you're connected to me now." He paused, wincing. "And I'm about to pass out from blood loss, which means I need medical attention without going to a hospital where too many people ask questions." So you're a trained medic. I can see it in how you evaluated my injuries." His smile was sharp despite the blood. "Help me, and I'll make sure your face doesn't end up on every news station in New York. Walk away and—" He shrugged. "Maybe you'll be fine. Maybe those men will find you first." It wasn't really a choice. Amara looked at the exits, police at the front, Jean Woo's men at the back, and felt 18 months of careful invisibility crumbling around her. She thought of the Kandahar operation, of the aftermath that had forced her underground, of the powerful people who'd wanted her silent and dead. She'd saved this man's life. Now he held hers in his bleeding hands. "One night," she said finally, "I stabilize you, then I disappear. No questions, no obligations." Jean Woo's smile widened despite his obvious pain. "No questions. I promise." They both knew he was lying. His guard led them through the kitchen as police entered the dining room, past sous chefs pressed against stainless steel counters, through a service corridor reeking of grease and bleach. A black Mercedes SUV idled in the alley, engine purring. Jean Woo collapsed into the back seat. Amara slid in beside him, her hands already assessing his wounds with professional detachment, even as her mind screamed that she just made the worst decision of her life. The door slammed. The vehicle pulled into Manhattan traffic. And Amara Williams, whoever she'd been before that, whoever she might become after, vanished into the New York night with a bleeding crime lord and no way back to invisible. Brooklyn Heights. Jean Woo's penthouse. 11:23 p.m. The penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a converted warehouse overlooking the East River. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline like a painting, the Chrysler Building's Art Deco spire, the Empire State bathed in blue light, thousands of windows holding thousands of lives less complicated than the ones unfolding in this room. Amara worked in silence. She'd found Jean Woo's first aid supplies in a bathroom that cost more than most people's yearly salary. Marble counters, a soaking tub, and a locked cabinet containing enough medical equipment to run a field hospital. Sutures, antibiotics, surgical glue, even bags of saline with 4 kits. This wasn't a man unprepared for violence. "Shirt off," she commanded, snapping on latex gloves. Jean Woo complied, peeling away blood-soaked fabric to reveal a body mapped with scars, old knife wounds across his ribs, a bullet graze on his shoulder, the faded remnants of what looked like a burn on his left side. Each mark told a story he'd never share with someone like her. The new wound below his ribcage wasn't deep, the blade had caught mostly muscle, but it needed cleaning and closure. "This will hurt," Amara said, dousing gauze in antiseptic. "I've had worse." She pressed the gauze against torn flesh. Jean Woo's jaw clenched, but he didn't flinch. Didn't make a sound. Just watched her face with those calculating eyes while she worked, and Amara hated how exposed that made her feel. "You said no questions," she muttered, threading a curved needle. "I'm not asking. Just observing. Observe less. Difficult when someone this interesting is stitching me back together." He paused as she began suturing, his breathing controlled despite the pain. "You've done this before. Field medicine, not emergency room." Amara focused on each stitch, perfect spacing, minimal scarring. "You said no questions." That wasn't a question. She tied off the suture with more force than necessary. "You're infuriating." "So I've been told." Jean Woo caught her wrist gently as she reached for bandages. "Thank you. For saving my life." Their eyes met. His gratitude seemed genuine beneath the calculation, and something in Amara's chest, Something she'd kept locked and frozen for 18 months, cracked slightly. "Don't thank me yet," she said, pulling away to apply dressings. "We don't know if those men are coming back." As if summoned by her words, Jean Woo's lieutenant entered, a lean man in his 40s with silver threading through his black hair and eyes that radiated suspicion. He spoke rapid Korean, gesturing at Amara with obvious distrust. Jean Woo responded in English, forcing the conversation open. "Speak so our guest understands, Tae-jin." Tae-jin's smile was sharp. "Our guest is a mystery. My men are investigating the attackers, rivals from Queens, sent by the Volkov brothers to test your vulnerabilities. But the bigger mystery is her." He pointed at Amara, a waitress who fights like Sayeret Mackle, who appears on no military databases we can access, whose employment history begins 18 months ago with a social security number that's almost clean. Amara's blood turned cold. "You ran my information?" "Of course." Tae-jin's tone suggested she was naive for thinking otherwise. "The question is what we do with you now. You've seen this location. You know Mr. Park's face is connected to organized crime. You're a liability." "She saved my life," Jean Woo said quietly, but with steel underneath. "And now she's a witness. And a target." Tae-jin pulled up his phone, showing a news alert. "Mysterious woman stops restaurant attack. NYPD seeking identity." Grainy security footage showed Amara's profile, partially obscured but recognizable to anyone looking closely. "It's already trending," Tae-jin continued. 3 million views in 2 hours. Someone will identify her eventually, either police or whoever she's been hiding from. He turned to Jean Woo. "She stays under guard until we understand who she is and who might come looking." "I'm not your prisoner," Amara said, standing. "No," Jean Woo agreed, voice heavy with something like regret. "But you're not safe out there anymore either. Those men saw you with me. Whoever they work for will assume you're my associate. And if you really are running from something—" He gestured at the news coverage. "Your invisibility just ended." Amara stared at her face frozen on that screen. Grainy, partial, but there. Existing. Visible. Everything she'd sacrificed to avoid. "One night," Jean Woo said softly. "Stay tonight. Let me have my people scrub what they can from the internet. Tomorrow, we'll figure out how to keep you safe. I don't need your protection." "Perhaps not. But you need time." His eyes held hers. "And I owe you a debt. Let me repay it." Amara looked at the windows. 43 floors up, no fire escape, guards at the only exit. She could fight her way out, probably. But to what? Her apartment was compromised. Her identity was viral. The people she'd been hiding from now had a trail to follow. Jean Woo was right, even if admitting it burned. "One night," she repeated. "Then I'm gone." He nodded, but they both heard the lie in her voice. One night was already becoming something more. 3:47 a.m. Amara found Jean Woo on the rooftop terrace, staring at the city's insomnia. He changed into black joggers and a t-shirt that revealed more scars, bandages stark white against his skin. A bottle of Jameson sat on the glass table beside him, 2/3 empty. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Never can after." She trailed off, joining him at the railing. The East River glittered below like scattered diamonds. "After violence. My brain won't shut down." "Same." He poured whiskey into 2 glasses, slid one toward her. Taejeon thinks you're CIA. Or Mossad. Possibly FSB playing a long game. I'm none of those things. Then what are you? Have you ever had to choose between telling the truth and protecting yourself? Comment below. What would you do in Amara's position? Amara lifted the whiskey, let it burn down her throat. 18 months of silence pressed against her teeth, wanting release. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way Jin-woo looked at her, not with suspicion like Taejeon, but with something closer to recognition. Like seeing another soldier who'd wandered too far from home. Army intelligence, she said finally. Recruited out of Howard University when I was 20. Specialized in counterterrorism, asset management, signals intelligence. Deployed to Afghanistan twice. The words came faster now, a dam breaking. Last deployment, Kandahar Province, 2023. My team was running an operation tracking weapons shipments from Pakistani ISI to Taliban cells. What happened? We found something we weren't supposed to find. Her knuckles whitened on the glass. The weapons weren't just coming from ISI. Some were being diverted by our own contractors, American companies selling to both sides, laundering money through Dubai shell corporations. I compiled evidence, sent it up the chain of command. Jin-woo's expression darkened. They buried it. Worse. They burned my entire team. Her voice cracked. Sent us on a supposed extraction mission. It was an ambush. 6 people I trained with, eaten with, trusted with my life, dead in a marketplace in Kandahar because someone in Washington decided their silence was worth more than their lives. But you survived. I survived because I'm paranoid. Ran the coordinates before we deployed, saw they matched a location flagged in intelligence reports as hostile. I tried to warn them. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't bother wiping it away. They thought I was being overcautious. Protocol said we go. So we went. The memory played behind her eyes, dust and screaming, blood spreading across ancient stones. Her sergeant, Johnson, 34, 2 kids in Atlanta, dying in her arms while bullets tore through market stalls. I was the only one who made it out, she whispered. Went to ground, contacted a journalist, leaked everything. The documents made it to the Washington Post, then suddenly disappeared. My journalist contact. She closed her eyes. Car accident. Very convenient. And you've been running since. 18 months in Brooklyn, waitressing, hiding. I changed my appearance, my name, everything. Thought I was safe. She laughed bitterly. Until tonight, when I couldn't watch another person die in front of me. Jin-woo was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, my family disowned me when I was 25. My father was a pastor in Seoul, respected, loved. I was supposed to follow that path. Instead, I got involved with some very bad people running protection rackets in Koreatown, Queens. Why? Because I was angry. Because the church's money and prayers hadn't saved my younger brother when he got sick. Because I wanted power over something when I'd felt powerless my whole life. He drank deeply. I built an empire on that anger. Made enough money to save 1,000 sick kids. But my family sees only the blood it took to earn it. Do you regret it? Every day. And never. His smile was sad. The contradiction is the point, I think. We're not one thing or another. Good or evil. We're just trying to survive the choices that brought us here. Amara understood that in her bones. The man who died because of your evidence, Jin-woo said carefully. His name was Kim Jae-sung. He was one of my information brokers in Kabul. Fed me intelligence about shipping routes, border movements. When he died, it cost me $3 million and 2 years of groundwork. The air left Amara's lungs. I should hate you, Jin-woo continued. Tae-jin thinks I should eliminate you as a liability. But... He turned to face her fully. You tried to save him. You tried to save all of them. The people who betrayed you are the ones who deserve hatred, not the soldier who fought back. How can you? Because I know what it's like to carry bodies that aren't your fault. His hand found hers on the railing, warm despite the October cold. You don't have to carry them alone anymore. For the first time in 18 months, Amara believed someone might understand. The sky was beginning to lighten, deep blue fading to gray, the city preparing for another day. Below, early traffic hummed across the Brooklyn Bridge. Somewhere, people were hunting her. Somewhere, Jin-woo's enemies were planning their next move. But here, on this rooftop, two people who'd been alone too long stood together in the almost dawn. And something fragile began growing in the spaces between their scars. 3 days later, Jin-woo's penthouse. The war room occupied the penthouse's second floor, floor-to-ceiling monitors displaying security feeds, shipping schedules, financial transactions. Amara sat cross-legged on a leather couch, laptop balanced on her knees, fingers flying across keys with the muscle memory of her intelligence days. There, she said, highlighting a section of code. Tae-jin's encrypted communications route through a server in Prague, but there's a secondary pathway. See this? Someone's mirroring his messages to an external IP. Jin-woo leaned over her shoulder, close enough that she caught his scent, sandalwood and something darker. His wound was healing cleanly thanks to her stitch work. Can you trace it? Give me 20 minutes. She'd been working with Jin-woo for 72 hours now, combining her signals intelligence training with his network resources. The attack at Lumiere hadn't been random. Someone inside Jin-woo's organization had sold him out to the Volkov brothers. Finding the mole was survival for both of them. But somewhere between intercepted phone calls and decrypted files, they'd fallen into a rhythm that felt like more than professional cooperation. Jin-woo brought her Ethiopian coffee at 2 a.m., remembered she took it black. She taught him breathing exercises for the nightmares that woke him gasping at 4 a.m. Yesterday, while analyzing financial records, he'd asked about her childhood in Washington, D.C., and she'd found herself describing her grandmother's kitchen. Collard greens simmering, Etta James on vinyl, the feeling of being loved unconditionally. She sounds wonderful, he'd said softly. She died thinking I abandoned her. I couldn't risk contact after I went underground. The grief still tasted fresh. Now, as Amara traced the IP address through layers of VPNs and proxies, Jin-woo disappeared and returned with Thai takeout from a place in Park Slope. Pad CEW, extra broccoli, exactly how she'd mentioned liking it once. You remembered, she said, surprised. I remember everything about you. The words hung in the air, intimate and dangerous. They ate surrounded by evidence of betrayal, but the conversation drifted elsewhere. His failed attempt to learn guitar, my instructor quit after 3 lessons. Her secret love of terrible reality TV, there's something soothing about other people's manufactured drama. The way they both preferred cities at night when the masks came off. Say something in Korean, Amara requested, setting down her empty container. Dangsanun Arium Day. What does that mean? You're beautiful. Heat crept up her neck. You can't just. Why not? It's true. Jin Woo's smile was genuine, free of calculation for once. You're brilliant and lethal, and you make terrible jokes when you're nervous. You bite your lower lip when you're concentrating. You have 17 freckles across your nose that I've counted at least 5 times. And yes, you're beautiful. Amara's throat tightened. I'm a mess. I'm wanted by people who've killed for less. I destroyed my entire life because I couldn't keep quiet. You destroyed your life because you have a conscience. Because you couldn't watch injustice happen and do nothing. He moved closer, careful, like approaching something wild that might flee. That's not weakness, Amara. That's the opposite. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. What are we doing? She whispered. I don't know. His hand reached up, fingers ghosting along her jaw. But I know I haven't felt this alive in years. You make me want to be someone my family could be proud of. Someone who uses power to protect instead of just accumulate. Jin Woo. You don't have to run anymore, he said, echoing that first night. Not from me. Not from this. Whatever this is becoming. Amara let herself lean into his touch, just for a moment. Let herself imagine a world where a former intelligence officer and a Korean crime lord could build something real from the wreckage of their broken lives. His lips brushed hers, tentative, questioning. She answered by closing the distance, kissing him with 18 months of loneliness and 3 days of unexpected connection. His hands tangled in her hair, hers pressed against his healing wound, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Jin Woo rested his forehead against hers. Sarangi, he murmured. I don't know what that means. Good. Let me keep some mystery. She laughed, actually laughed, and it felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The laptop chimed. Amara turned back to the screen, and her smile died. I found your mole, she said quietly. The IP address belonged to Tae-jin's personal device. The man Jin Woo trusted most had sold him to his enemies. And according to the intercepted messages, another attack was planned. 48 hours, this location, overwhelming force. Jin Woo's expression hardened back into the cold mask she'd first seen at Lumiere. Show me everything. The fragile piece shattered like glass. Tae-jin arrived at the penthouse 30 minutes after Jin Woo's summons, composed and unsuspecting. Amara watched from the shadows as Jin Woo's guards disarmed him, professionally, thoroughly, finding 2 guns, a knife, and a garrote wire disguised as a belt. Hyung Nim, Tae-jin said, using the Korean honorific for boss. What's this about? Jin Woo threw a tablet across the desk. It displayed encrypted messages, financial transfers, GPS coordinates for the Lumiere attack, all traced back to Tae-jin's devices. You're the leak. Tae-jin's face remained neutral, but his eyes flickered toward Amara. You're trusting her evidence? A fugitive who appeared 3 days ago. I'm trusting data that doesn't lie. Jin Woo's voice was arctic. $40,000 deposited in your Cayman account the day before the attack. Coordinates sent to the Volkov brothers from your phone. Meeting schedules, security details, everything they needed to kill me. Those files are fabricated. I watched her trace them in real time. Jin Woo stood, and the temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. 6 years. Tae-jin. I trusted you for 6 years. You ate at my table. Met my mother. I made you rich beyond what any other organization would offer. Why? Finally, Tae-jin's mask cracked. Because you were going soft. The word dripped contempt. Talking about legitimacy, about transitioning to legal business. You were going to dismantle everything we built for what? Respectability? Your family's approval. He laughed bitterly. They'll never accept you, Jin-woo. You're a gangster. That's all you'll ever be to them. So you decided to kill me? I decided to partner with people who understand power isn't about going soft for some woman. Tae-jin's eyes cut to Amara. Speaking of whom, did you tell him about Kim Jae-sung? About how her little whistleblowing crusade got our Kabul asset killed? Jin-woo's expression didn't change. I know. And you're protecting her? She cost us $3 million. She's the reason. She tried to save people, Jin-woo interrupted quietly. She saw corruption and fought it. While you... His jaw clenched. You sold me for $40,000. That's what 6 years of loyalty was worth to you. Amara stepped forward from the shadows. Kim's death wasn't my fault. It was the people who set up my team, who wanted us silenced. I tried. You tried. Tae-jin's voice rose. People died because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. You had evidence of corruption? So what? That's how the world works. You think you're some hero for exposing it? You're just naive. Dangerous. And now you've infected Jin-woo with the same disease, this stupid belief that people like us can be anything other than what we are. The words landed like bullets. Jin-woo looked at Amara, and she saw something shift behind his eyes. Doubt. The old wound of family rejection tearing open. You're a gangster. That's all you'll ever be. Jin-woo, she said softly. He's manipulating you. Am I? Tae-jin pressed. Or am I the only one being honest? She's been lying to you from the beginning. Running from consequences, hiding her past, pretending to be someone she's not. Just like you pretend your money can wash away the blood. We're the same, Hyung Nim. Survivors. But her. He jerked his chin at Amara. She's a liability who'll get you killed while convincing you you're being noble. The silence stretched like broken glass. Get out, Jin-woo said finally, voice hollow. Amara's heart stopped. What? Both of you. Tae-jin, you have 1 hour to leave New York. If I see you again, you're dead. And Amara. He wouldn't meet her eyes. I can't. I need you to leave. Now. Jin-woo, please. You knew. His voice cracked. You knew what your evidence cost me, cost my network. You knew Kim died because of what you exposed, and you said nothing. Just let me... He stopped, jaw working. Let me care about you while sitting on that truth. I didn't know his name until you told me. I tried to save. Everyone you try to save ends up dead. The words exploded from him, raw and vicious. Your team. Kim. How long until it's me? Until your righteousness gets me killed too. The accusation hung between them like a chasm. Amara felt something in her chest shatter. Something fragile she'd been carefully rebuilding over 3 days of shared coffee and midnight conversations and a kiss that had tasted like possibility. I see, she said quietly. You're right. I'm the problem. Not the system that kills whistleblowers, not the traitor who sold you out, not the family that abandoned you for arbitrary moral standards. It's me. The woman who saved your life. Amara. No. She backed toward the door, vision blurring. You want someone to blame for feeling worthless? For being rejected? Fine. Blame me. It's easier than facing that maybe, just maybe, the people who made you feel unworthy were wrong. She turned to leave, and his voice followed her. You don't understand what it's like to be told you're irredeemable. Amara looked back, tears streaming now. I've spent 18 months believing exactly that. The difference is, I was starting to think I might be wrong. Thanks for the reminder. She walked out into the October night, leaving behind the first person in 18 months who'd made her feel like home. Behind her, Jin-woo stood in his penthouse surrounded by evidence of betrayal, alone again. Just like he'd always been. Just like he'd apparently always wanted to be. 48 hours later. Brooklyn Motel. Amara sat on a bed that smelled of bleach and desperation, staring at a burner phone. The motel was the kind you paid cash for, where the clerk didn't look at faces and the neighbors didn't ask questions. She'd booked a ticket to Vancouver under a new identity, fake passport courtesy of a hacker she'd met during her underground months. The flight left JFK at 6 a.m. 8 hours to disappear again. She should pack. Should sleep. Instead, she stared at the phone and the news alert glowing on its cracked screen. Korean businessman's penthouse under siege. Shots fired in Brooklyn Heights. The attack Tae-jin had planned was happening. Right now. The Volkov brothers had sent a small army. The article mentioned at least 15 armed individuals, reports of sustained gunfire, police establishing a perimeter but unable to breach due to active shooter situation. Jin-woo was trapped in there. Possibly bleeding. Possibly dying. Definitely alone. Not your problem, Amara whispered to the empty room. He made his choice. He told you to leave. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She thought about the kiss. About his fingers in her hair, his whispered Korean words, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious instead of broken. She thought about his confession on the rooftop. I know what it's like to carry bodies that aren't your fault. She thought about walking away while someone who'd seen her, really seen her, died alone. You don't owe him anything, she said aloud, trying to convince herself. The words sounded hollow. Her training kicked in unbidden. Tactical assessment. 15 attackers, fortified position, Jin-woo's guards competent but outnumbered. Police wouldn't breach in time. Protocol in active shooter situations was contain and negotiate, not immediate assault. By the time SWAT made entry, Jin-woo could be dead. Would be dead, if the Volkovs wanted him dead badly enough. Amara picked up the phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. She pulled up her contact list, all 3 numbers in it. The hacker who'd made her fake passport. A journalist who owed her a favor. And Jin-woo's number, which she'd saved despite telling herself not to. Her thumb hovered over his name. He'd accused her of getting people killed. Of being a liability. Of infecting him with naive beliefs about redemption. Every word had been designed to cut, and they had. Deep. The kind of wounds that don't heal cleanly. But underneath the cruelty, she'd heard something else. Fear. Fear that caring about her meant vulnerability. That opening up meant inevitable loss. That Tae-jin was right. People like them couldn't be anything other than what survival had made them. Amara understood that fear intimately. She'd been living it for 18 months. Fuck, she breathed. She stood, began gathering her gear, the few weapons she'd acquired, tactical clothing, the skills she tried so hard to bury. Her reflection in the stained mirror looked back, no longer the invisible waitress, but not quite the soldier either. Something in between. Something new. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Amara. A woman's voice, elderly, Korean accented. My name is Park Min-seo. I am Jin-woo's mother. Amara's breath caught. How did you? My son's associate, before he fled, he called me. Told me Jin-woo was in danger. Told me. Her voice broke. Told me Jin-woo had finally found someone who made him want to be better. That he'd ruined it. That if anything happened to him, you should know he was sorry. Mrs. Park, I rejected my son for his choices. For 3 years, I told myself it was righteous. But tonight, I am afraid I will never hear his voice again. She was crying now. If you care for him at all, please. He is alone. He has always been so alone. The line went dead. Amara stared at the phone, at the news alert, at her plane ticket to Vancouver. 8 hours to disappear. Or 1 hour to do the stupidest, bravest thing she'd ever done. She thought about Jin-woo's voice. You don't have to run anymore. Not from me. She thought about her own words. I was starting to think I might be wrong. About being irredeemable. About deserving love. About whether someone's worst moment defined them forever. Amara grabbed her jacket and the Sig Sauer she'd lifted from Lumiere. I'm already on my way, she whispered to no one. To Jin-woo. To herself. To the person she was choosing to become. Brooklyn Heights. 2:47 a.m. The penthouse was a war zone. Amara approached through the building's service entrance, the same route they'd used leaving Lumiere, now her way back in. Bodies littered the stairwell. Jin-woo's guards, some of the Volkov soldiers, blood painting abstract patterns on concrete. She moved through the carnage with her weapon raised, clearing corners, listening for movement above the distant wail of police sirens. 43rd floor. The penthouse door hung off its hinges. Inside, furniture was shredded by bullets. The floor-to-ceiling windows had shattered, letting October wind howl through like a living thing. Shell casings crunched under her boots. She counted 7 more bodies, none of them Jin-woo. Then she heard it, labored breathing from the war room upstairs. She took the stairs silently, every nerve singing with adrenaline. The war room door was barricaded from inside. She knocked once, a specific pattern Jin-woo had used when bringing her coffee. It's me, she called softly. Silence. Then furniture scraping. The door opened a crack. Jin-woo stood there covered in blood, his and others, holding a gun with a half-empty magazine. His eyes widened with disbelief. You came back. You're an idiot, Amara said, pushing inside. But you're my idiot. Before he could respond, she heard footsteps, 3 men ascending the stairs, speaking Russian. The Volkov's final push. Amara and Jin-woo's eyes met. No words needed. They'd fought together once before. They knew each other's rhythm. She took position left of the door. He took right. The first attacker entered and Amara's bullet found his chest. The second got Jin-woo's knife. Close quarters, brutal efficiency. The third raised his weapon, but Amara was already moving, disarming him with a technique that would have made her Fort Huachuca instructors proud. 30 seconds. 3 threats eliminated. Silence fell except for their breathing and the wind through broken windows. You should have stayed gone, Jinwoo said finally, lowering his gun. You should've. Amara crossed the space between them and kissed him. Hard, desperate, alive. Shut up. I came back because I love you, you self-sabotaging, emotionally damaged crime lord. And because your mother called me. My mother. Long story. Tell you later. Right now we need to. Police bullhorns echoed up from below. This is the NYPD. The building is surrounded. Jinwoo and Amara looked at each other, then at the carnage surrounding them. Well, he said wryly, this complicates things. Amara started laughing, slightly unhinged, running on adrenaline and emotion. You think love means choosing someone even when it's hard? Have you ever fought for a relationship everyone said was impossible? Share your story in the comments. 6 months later. Seoul, South Korea. The Park family home sat in Bukshin Hanok village, traditional architecture preserved among Seoul's glass towers. Amara stood outside the gate, Jinwoo's hand warm in hers, both of them nervous in ways that combat had never made them. The legal aftermath had been complicated. Jinwoo's cooperation with authorities in exchange for immunity, Amara's testimony exposing the corruption that had destroyed her team. The people who'd wanted her silent were now facing congressional hearings. She'd been cleared, exonerated, free. But this, meeting his mother after 3 years of estrangement, this felt more terrifying than any firefight. You ready? Amara asked. Jinwoo squeezed her hand. With you, yes. The door opened before they could knock. Park Min-seo stood there, small, elegant, eyes the same shape as her son's. She looked at Jinwoo for a long moment, and Amara watched emotions cascade across the older woman's face. Grief, regret, love. You came, Min-seo whispered in English, for Amara's benefit. I came, Jinwoo replied, voice thick. Iyama, I'm sorry. For everything. For the choices I made. For the years I. His mother pulled him into an embrace, and Jinwoo, cold, controlled Jinwoo who'd built an empire on calculated cruelty, broke. Sobbed into his mother's shoulder like the lost son he'd always been. Gwenchaneo, Min-seo murmured, stroking his hair. It's okay now. You're home. She released him after a long moment, then turned to Amara. And you must be the woman who saved my son's life. Twice, I think. He saved mine too, Amara said quietly. Made me believe I deserved to be saved. Min-seo smiled, tearful and radiant. Then you have both found what you needed. Come. I made jjigae. We have much to talk about. They followed her inside, into warmth and acceptance and the smell of home-cooked food. Through the windows, Seoul stretched endlessly, a city of transformation, of old and new existing together. Like them. That night, after dinner and stories and Min-seo's delighted insistence that they visit weekly, Jinwoo and Amara stood on the guesthouse balcony overlooking the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. Thank you, he murmured, for coming back, for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. Thank you for being worth coming back to. He turned her to face him, fingers gentle on her jaw. Sarangi. I know what that means now, Amara said, smiling. I love you too. They kissed under Seoul's neon sky, two people who'd been lost, been broken, been convinced they were irredeemable. Two people who'd found each other in violence and chosen each other in vulnerability. Redemption wasn't erasing the past. It was building something beautiful beside someone who'd seen your darkness and loved you anyway. It was choosing, every day, to be better than yesterday. It was coming home, to a place, to a person, to yourself. Together, they walked back inside, leaving the door open behind them. Ready for whatever came next.